series. Oh my God, Ian, are you here? Oh, I just got my hair cut and I'm all scratchy and itchy from all this hair. Hi, I'm Ian. Around here, I talk about books because I love to yap. If you're new here, I'd love for you to consider subscribing, and don't forget to like and comment on this video. It really helps. Let me know what your favorite wintry book is to read this time of year, or what you have planned for the cold season. This video is obviously my winter TBR. So autumn was rough, but it calloused me for winter. Although autumn was a challenging season, I actually did read almost all the books on my TBR. Today, I'm going to be discussing 19 books on my winter TBR. These are definitely hopefuls. I will likely not read all of these, but they are in my official stacks to choose from. The only caveat is I'm not going to list everything from January in this video because my January TBR is going to release shortly after this one, so feel free to click the bell to get a notification for when that happens. But my favorite thing about January is that I have decided to apply the theme of tying up loose ends or finishing unfinished business, which means that I'm going to read books that I have already started and try to finish them by the end of the month to get ready for the Lunar New Year, if you will. Without further ado, let's get into it. First up, this is a book, the third book in a trilogy that I have yet to finish, and that's how the theme applies here. It's The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin. If you've somehow been living under a rock, I will explain to you that this is the third book in the Broken Earth trilogy. This is sci-fi, fantasy, dystopian, apocalyptic. I gave the first book, the 5th season, 4 stars, and I gave the second book, The Obelisk Gate, I think it was 3.75 stars. The first book is about a mother searching for her missing daughter on this continent called the Stillness. Here, they're periodically plagued with giant earthquakes that destroy civilization. And in this world, there are people called Orogenes. They have genetically adapted the ability to control seismic energy. Things that I have loved about this series so far are the magic school that shows up, the post-apocalyptic vibes, good versus evil, and chosen one tropes. It has a lot of stuff that I really like. There's a pivot halfway through the second book that somewhat turns the whole series from more sci-fi leaning into fantasy leaning. I just thought it was the coolest pivot that I'd ever read. So I'm excited to see where things go in the third book. Speaking of pivots, I'm gonna go from hardcore genre to literary fiction, deep literary fiction at that. Toni Morrison's Tar Baby. I'm a huge Toni Morrison fan. She's my idol. I've read Beloved 3 times. Beloved is my favorite book of all time. That is 6 stars. I read The Bluest Eye last year and I gave that 5 stars. And I also read Sula, which I gave 4.25 stars. So I love my Toni Morrison. This is about Jadine Childs, who is a black fashion model with a white patron, a white boyfriend, and a coat made out of 90 perfect sealskins. And she's having an affair with a black fugitive. You can imagine the themes on blackness and whiteness and existing in 2 different worlds and having to play different parts. I am really, really excited for this. I've been wanting to read this for a really long time. I consider this more along the lines of this is the only Toni Morrison book that I own that I have not read. So it's me completing a collection. Then A Marvelous Light by Freya Marsky. This is queer historical fantasy, gaslamp, like Edwardian era. I started this last spring, I think, and last spring was kind of nuts for me. I'm looking forward to starting this over again. I'm going to start from the beginning because I don't really remember what happened, but I do remember thinking it was way more queer than I thought it would be. There is a baronet named Robin Blythe, and he is mistakenly appointed as parliamentary liaison to a secret society on behalf of the British government. It's there that he discovers this whole magical world that has been existing alongside his own, and he is given the task of finding his missing predecessor, and he has to do so with this man named Edwin while also dodging a deadly curse. I'm a big historical fiction fan, so I think I'm gonna like this. This next book doesn't fit the theme of tying up loose ends, but it does fit the theme of the particular holiday that's in January. You probably know, and I'm not talking about New Year's, but Martin Luther King Day. So I am going to be reading this chunk called King, A Life. It's a memoir written by Jonathan Eig. I don't know how to pronounce that. It won the Pulitzer Prize, and I'm really looking forward to reading something that is a comprehensive, like, can you see, I can barely hold it up. A comprehensive account of his life. After reading this, I am going to be looking up maybe any criticisms that were leveraged against this book, just so I can keep in mind if there's anything in particular that could be wrong in here or might have been misconstrued. I want to have a balanced mindset. I'm excited to delve into the life of MLK outside of a primary school setting, if you know what I mean. And then the last book on my January TBR that I'll be talking about in this video, but again, reminder, to stay tuned for January TBR video, which will be coming out in about a week. Swan Song by Robert McCammon. This is apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic, good versus evil elements, and a bit of dark fantasy as well. So I'm about 100 pages in, and I'm actually really liking this, but the only way that I'm going to be able to tackle something this big that I'm actually really enjoying is if I dedicate time to it. So I was like, you know what? We're putting it in January. I'm going to finish this sucker up. I have like 700 odd pages left, but I was able to get my hands on the audiobook, which is exclusive only to Audible. Don't get me started on that one. So I will also have, I think, an easier time settling into the book. So far, there are lots of characters in lots of different locations. This is essentially The Stand, but nuclear war. I loved The Stand by Stephen King, and this is already giving me those vibes. So I think by the end of this, I'm going to really like it. And I wouldn't be surprised if it has a better ending than The Stand. We all know Stephen King is not. He's not known for his endings, is he? Also, in my January TBR video, which will be coming out soon, I will be talking about my fantasy challenge that I'm going to be doing in 2025, my sci-fi challenge that I'm going to be doing in 2025, and my sort of nonfiction goals, I guess is the best way to say it. But I'm really looking forward to talking about those. So there are more books on my TBR aside from these chunkers. So if you want to know anything about that, click that bell and don't forget to subscribe so you can get a notification. Now on to February. Obviously Valentine's Day is in February, so I'm leaning really hard into the romance. One thing I discovered is that I do like romance if it is queer and if there's no comedy, which I thought was really weird. That is neither here nor there, but we are here the whole time. By Vitor Martin. So this is queer contemporary YA. It was written in Brazil, so it's been translated from Portuguese by Larissa Helena. One reason I chose this book, honestly, is because of how many big books I'm going to be reading in January, and I really wanted to tone it down a little bit. This, plus the margins, the YA, like, this is going to save me. This is about Felipe, who is an overweight teenager, and he is looking forward to having a wonderful, nice summer vacation. Then he finds out that his attractive neighbor Caio will be staying with him while his parents are away for 15 days. And this throws Felipe into a spiral over his insecurities and whatnot. I am really looking forward to the themes around body image and weight and fat phobia that this will address. I don't think I've read a book that brings those up, especially in a setting where it is an overweight person and a normal-bodied person, whatever you want to call that. Anyway, I'm really looking forward to it. Not to mention Rainbow Rowell blurbed it on the front. Then a book that I've heard really wonderful things about. I actually hated the US covers, so I bought the British one, and I got Evenings and Weekends by Oisin McKenna. This is contemporary literary fiction, so it's going to be really heavy on the characters and their relationships and probably their inner hopes and desires. This is set in London, and it follows a group of interconnected characters over a weekend about pregnant Maggie and her boyfriend Ed, and their friend Phil, and his housemate Keith. And everything culminates along with the rise in temperature in this sweltering summer, revolving around a party that acts as a catalyst for change. When I heard that this book wasn't just about romance, but also about friendships, that's what really drew me to this. I had originally written it off, thinking that it was just going to be a bunch of straight people being in love, and obviously nothing wrong with that, but not what I want to read about. But I guess it's not that. Really excited to be proved wrong, and I'm hoping that I love this. Sticking with love themes with Lie With Me by Philippe Besson. This was translated from the French by none other than Molly Ringwald. You may have heard of her. This is contemporary literary fiction. I get vibes that there might be some autofiction here. This is set in 1984 in rural France, and it follows the narrator named Philippe as he sort of recalls a secret romance from when he was a teenager. And what sets this off is, I think he's at like a beach, or he's out in public somewhere, and he sees someone that reminds him of the person that he had this affair with when he was a teenager. Sounds interesting, and it's short, so I think this will be good, and I've really only heard good things about this. Honestly, I'm not a romantic at heart, so it makes total sense that I would be bringing this book up to read during Valentine's Day season. It's The Divorce by Moa Herngren. This was translated from the Swedish by Alice Menzies. I honestly don't even know how I remember some of this shit when I can't even remember my name when people ask. This is also contemporary literary fiction. That is going to be the theme of February for me. And it is set in Sweden, and it follows the dissolution of Bea and Nicholas's relationship during summer. I've heard that this is told from two different perspectives, and that the first half of the book is one person's perspective, and then the latter half of the book is the second person's perspective. And that each perspective wildly changes how you, the relationship that's at the center of this story. I also really like the cover. I don't really know why I like the cover. There's nothing really special about it, honestly. But I love I really love big paperbacks. This one I'm so fucking excited for. You have no idea. Oh my god. Shark Heart by Emily Haybeck? Haybeck? This is contemporary literary fiction, probably no surprise to anyone, with hints of magical realism because the plot is nutso. It's set in modern day Texas and Oklahoma, and it follows newlyweds Ren and Lewis as they deal with Lewis's rare condition that he will turn into a great white shark within a year. The people who have read it love it, and I think I will too, especially because even though this is a hetero couple, there does seem to be this allegory of transitioning from one presentation to another. Hint, hint. I'm told that this deals with themes of love and grief and transformation and resilience that's required in relationships. Not to mention this cover is banging. Then a book that was on my autumn TBR is making its way over to my winter TBR because I'm gonna give it another shot and I feel like it fits February's vibe even closer, and that's Anyone's Ghost by August Thompson. This follows a 15-year-old who forms a transformative friendship and relationship with an older man, and it explores how this relationship affects him into adulthood. It sounds really intense, and I think that it is a story that a lot of queer, especially queer elders, might be able to identify with. I am also interested in the themes of falling in love with someone who cannot return those feelings the way you want them to. Gonna give this another shot. This next one, I'm not going to talk a lot about it. I'm not going to say much about it because, I don't know, I'll probably get banned or something. So I'll talk very briefly about it. But let's just say that in 2025, one of my goals is to read my first smut. I've never read smut before. That is The Taste of Ink by Daniel May. And I love how websites are describing this like so cleanly. Like they're like, it's about a throuple. It's contemporary LGBTQ romance with some erotic elements. Like, what? What? I'm really interested to see if I even like this kind of material, but it's so common for people to read smut and just be open about it. And I'm like, wait, what? I would never, but I will. Then some historical literary fiction with Moonstone, The Boy Who Never Was by Sjón, I think is how you would say that. This is translated from Icelandic by Victoria Cribb. It's set in 1918 Reykjavik, Iceland, and it follows Manny, who is a queer and lonely teenager sort of navigating life during the Spanish flu epidemic while also the rise of cinema. I used to be really big into movies, so I am still drawn to stories that sort of revolve around cinema or movies, and this sounded really sweet, not to mention it is so short. The only downside to this is that I have seen not so great reviews for it on various platforms, but I'm hoping I'll have a different experience than everyone else, and if I'm not enjoying it, guess what? I'll DNF it. Next is a book that I got 54 pages into last year and had to DNF because it just didn't feel right. We're gonna find out if it is a DNF for now or a DNF forever. It's Lovely War by Julie Berry. It's historical romance with some elements of fantasy. It's set during World War I and World War II, and the narrators are actually Greek gods. Featured are Aphrodite and Hades and a few others. I was reading this, and the thing is, I am not opposed to reading stories about straight romance, but I really hate reading stories about straight romance in a world where there are no gay characters. Where gayness, like queerness, like doesn't even exist. I hate reading that. It's so boring to me. It's literally reading like an alternate universe to me. And that is sort of what happened while reading this. Last but not least is a piece of autofiction, which feels a little weird. That's Into a Star by Puck Kvortrup. I'm really taking some liberties with that one. This is a Danish author, and this was translated from the Danish by Hazel Evans. This is a work of autofiction. It's about a 26-year-old woman as she navigates the sudden death of her husband while she prepares to have their second baby. It sounds really intense. This sounds really heartbreaking. And honestly, I have been in the mood for some heavier material lately, so I kind of piled it on in February. We'll see if I'm still in the mood for something really sad when the time comes, but this just sounded so good. And the chapters are at a good length for my attention span. I do need some propulsiveness to my stories, and this seems to have held space for that. I feel like I would really get judged for liking this cover, but whatever, I stand by it. And then on to March. I have fewer books listed for March, and the main reason why is because in March, I'm going to have friends come to my home and pick out my books for me from my shelves. So my friends are choosing my TBR, basically. There will be a few things that I will absolutely be reading, whether or not they do their job and pick good books. Given how well memoirs went for me in 2025, my intention is to continue reading memoirs into 2025 and be more intentional about it. One way I'm doing that is by reading Shattered by Hanif Qureshi. So this is a memoir. It's set in Rome and London, and it is about Qureshi's life after a tragic fall in December 2022, after which he became paralyzed. I did not remember who Hanif Qureshi was, even though I recognized the name. I thought, how do I know that name? Like, maybe I've read other books that he's written. No, turns out he was the screenwriter for My Beautiful Laundrette, starring Daniel Day-Lewis, which I had just recently watched, but I hadn't made that connection yet. I have heard good things about it, and I'm just in a memoir kick, you know? Like, bring it on. Let's just do it. I'm gonna lean into it. So this will come about in March. It has nothing to do with any other March themes. Then I'm going to pick up 3 books that all have green covers because St. Patrick's Day. I love a good excuse to pick up a book, and if green covers is the excuse in March, then so be it. First, I'm picking up some historical fiction, and that's Trust by Hernan Diaz. I've been wanting to read this book for so long. It's set in 1920s and 1930s New York, and it explores themes of wealth and power through the lives of a Wall Street tycoon and his wife. There are multiple perspectives, and there is a novel within a novel in this, and I think that this could really hit home right now, given what some things are headlining in the news, and I imagine they will just continue to be part of the news well into the new year. I did briefly mention that I am going to be doing a fantasy challenge for myself, which you can find out more about in my January TBR. In March, one of the books that fits that challenge I have already picked out, and I will share with you. Green cover, can you imagine what it's going to be if it's fantasy? Green cover, think about it, think about it. It's probably too on the nose to guess, too literal. It's Jade City by Fonda Lee. It is rather large, but this is urban fantasy with a hard magic system, and it is set in a modern-esque city called Janloon. It follows the Kaul family, who are the leaders of the No Peak clan, and it follows them fighting off rival clans for control of Jade, which is a substance that enhances physical and combat abilities. There are apparently multiple perspectives in this, and I've often heard this compared to, God, what is it? Succession. I don't think it's the humor aspects that it's compared to, but rather the idea of struggling for power and family being at the center. Is there a map? There's a map. Oh, and a map of the city. I love a map. Then another green title, but this time we're leaning into some cozy fantasy from a writer who I love. It's TJ Klune's In the Lives of Puppets. It's about Victor Lawson, who lives in a secluded area with a few weird-ass robots, but they're a cute little weird family. But then a decommissioned android named Hap is suddenly activated, and it totally disrupts their lives. This is supposed to be like nice fantasy. I think this is part of TJ Klune's like nice trilogy. It's just supposed to be kind and cute, and I think that this will be a really nice balance from heaviness that I have going on in February. Not to mention, I just love TJ Klune covers. I anticipate having anywhere from 9 to 12 books to choose from for the month of March. Might read all of them, might not, but my friends are going to be choosing more, if not the rest of them. More to come at a later date, but that is it for this video. Those were my winter TBR books. Let me know what wintry books you like to read in the comments section. If you enjoyed this, like and subscribe so we can keep talking about books. I will see you next time, and happy reading.